It's time to get started again. If you'd please take your seats, I'll introduce our next speaker. Our next guest is Ken Poletski. He's the 2014 president of the Tri-City Association of Realtors. He's also the owner and managing broker of Community Real Estate Group. Ken has been licensed broker since 1995 and moved to the Tri-Cities in 2007. He also serves on various state and national committees in his industry. Help me welcome Ken.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to come today and speak. I wish I did have a crystal ball and can project the future. I think I did okay in 2007 when I moved from California because I got out of the market right before the housing crunch in the balloon burst. So I think I did all right there. In preparation for my presentation last night, I was reading it to my son, and he told me, "Dad, don't read, just tell him what you know about real estate and what's going to happen in 2015. He said I looked like a preacher, so I'll try not to bore you. Not that that's the case, but I'll try to give you some interesting facts that I find interesting about real estate. Last year was a banner year in real estate in the Tri-Cities. Many of us had some of our best years ever. Let's see if I can get, there we go. So there's some market influencers that affect real estate as we know it. The economic issues both nationally, across the state, and locally all have a interesting effect on real estate. I mean, with what we had in 2005, 6, and 7 across the nation had a global effect, and then obviously had some residual housing effects across in the Tri-Cities. We did very well, although we did have a slight ripple effect from that. Interest rates are also a big factor when it comes to real estate sales and affordability. Right now, we're at some all-time low rates. You'll see some slides here in a second that show you that the low interest rates actually helped us boost some of our housing sales in 2012 and 13. Affordability has always remained a great asset here in Tri-Cities. Looking back, I've done a study for over about a 37-year cycle, and so I've been able to see how affordability has been a big factor and a big draw for Tri-Cities in general when it comes to housing and housing markets. Currently, our average home price is $212,082 in the Tri-Cities, and this comes from the data that we collect from the Tri-City Association of Realtors. We own our own MLS system, so we are able to compile this data and provide it to the community. Of course, job market, hiring, and layoffs, and consumer confidence are also included in some market factors. Now, looking back since the recession, if you were to jump back into 2000, when the market housing bubble burst, I mean, that's when we had actually our highest volume of sales was in that year at 3,879 homes in the Tri-Cities. That was a great year. Looking back, prior to moving here, I did a little bit of studies just to make sure this was going to be a good area. And that was one of the things I was seeing as I made the move. Of course, not knowing what was going to happen to housing, I thought we would be continuing that. Then we actually did suffer the loss of with the housing market, and we saw a kind of a significant plummet there in 2008. 2009, 2010 was, I'm sure you all remember the Mortgage Debt Relief Act that was put into place, and that was to help those that were upside down on their mortgages to be able to sell their properties and be forgiven that amount of income or a ghost income that was the difference of what they owed on the property. But it did stimulate the market because what was happening in Tri-Cities is we were suffering with the fact that many people that were moving into the area were not able to sell their homes. And what that meant is they couldn't come here and buy. So if you remember those years, the rental market was completely saturated. I don't think there was any occupancy. I mean, trailer parks were filled up. All the apartments were rented, and we had a significant housing shortage going on during that period of time. And we rode that all the way through 2011. Then we started to see the interest rates I was talking about. We hit some all-time lows down in the 3s. I think you're even able to get down some 15 years in the 2.75, 2.95 range, which actually gave us just a small tick of a boost in 2011 and 12 and 13 is where we kind of started seeing that as a benefit to Tri-Cities. Last year, a significant number of homes sold. Was pleased to see that it was as high as it was when I ran the totals, and it was 3,639 homes. The graph that you're seeing here actually shows you a little bit of new construction as well. The orange lines there are the new homes, and you can kind of see that cycle through as well. We'll talk a little bit more about new homes and new construction in just a moment. I break statistics down as far as I can, and in this slide we're showing it on a month by month. And this is pretty common. Like currently now in 2015, we would be down in this 190, 200 home market. That's just fairly common with the time of year. Although we've had a great spring, I'm really kind of tired. I don't know who isn't tired of the gray skies we're having here. I know some of my agents are bringing happy lights, and I've never heard of a happy light, but apparently in Tri-Cities, when it's gray skies out, you bring a happy light to work, and it'll make you smile. But we'll see. So we looked like we spiked through our typical months there in the summer months of sales, which was good to see, and this is a compilation of that. To break it down by city, if you were to look at cities, and you often do when you're kind of looking at where you would set up your business or you would want to potentially move, it looks like I just lost some numbers that were on there. So I'll tell you what they were. The green line there is Kennewick, and they sold 1,287 homes in Kennewick last year, which was roughly about 39% of the market. And Kennewick's a little bit larger area, but it's actually saw a significant amount of growth in some of the new developments that were opening up in the South Ridge area, the Fountain Hills area, and so those helped with those numbers. Pasco's the blue area, and there was 865 homes that had sold in the Pasco area, and that was a significant drop from 2009. We'll see a slide here in a second that kind of shows you fluctuation by city. And then the yellow area is the Richland, and they were 901. Richland also saw some significant land opening up, and so that was able to help that boost. I mean, the West Cliff area is continuing to grow. They were doing lots of infill into the construction areas and they expanded into the Badger South area, which is actually continuing to expand. It's nice to see the new growth. West Richland, the red there was 265, and they were roughly about 8% of the market. We told you about new home sales. One of the things that brought me to the area was all of the expansions of potential ground that we have in the Tri-Cities and the opening up of subdivisions. And land is a thing that really, new construction has to follow land. If we don't have it, we can't open it up, we can't build it. But in 2011, we peaked in several different cities. And Pasco was one of them here locally in Pasco. And then we had the impact fees, and it actually made a significant drop along with lack of land to develop. And you can see where they've kind of seen a downward trend in new construction. Now, Kennewick, on the other hand, they've seen the typical cyclical part of real estate, and it just is common to always try to forecast where to build and what's going to happen, but they actually ended in 2014 with about 277 homes there. So looking forward, this is going to break us down by Pasco. So now if you look at the top line there, 865 homes, 160 of those were new construction. But if you look down the graph, down in 2011 and 10, that's when our peaks were hitting. That's when lots of new ground was here. There was a lot of production builders. There was no extra $5,000 fee on your permits. So we're actually seeing new ground open up off of the Road 100 area. That expansion of the road going out there has developed and opened up into Kohler and the Dent Road area, and we're seeing lots of new large lot subdivisions. And then over here at Pasco, First Place has also got significant ground, like 70 lots that have just opened up online too as well. And of course you got Madison Park out there. So we'll continue to see lots of new land opening up and new homes being built. West Richland, an area that has been expanding rapidly, and many people can share stories about riding motorcycles and horses out in the area out of Paradise and Sons, Paradise out by the racetrack there. That is actually expanding quite a bit, and I believe the Port of Kennewick is doing a bunch of groundwork out there, which will continue the growth of residential as it develops out in that direction. So we're seeing quite a bit of growth there. Then the Richland area, like I mentioned before, would be the Badger South, along the Riata Road area, and through there. They pretty much sold more homes in Richland last year than they did the previous year, and new construction was right on pace with where they're at, largely due to the rapid expansion of the Westcliff area and the homes that are going in that area. Kennewick, of course, they topped everybody in sales and actually exceeded last year's as well. They were right in line with where their new construction was going. And then the Hildebrand extension that's going through is going to continue to open up the Badger South area there in the Kennewick off of Thompson Hill, where there's a lot of builders building in various price ranges. This is a 36-year history of the Tri-Cities, and this chart goes back to 1977. This is a fun chart because you actually get to see a lot of the different cycles that have happened over the years and where that pricing line has gone. Like I mentioned earlier, we're at $212,082 average price. Last year we were at $208,000, so we went up that 2 to 3%. Average that Tri-Cities has gotten for the past several years, and we'll continue to probably continue to see that. 37-year sales history. I mentioned earlier that we had hit the 3,639 homes, and in that means that puts us back into the 2006 area. We only had 2 other years where we've actually exceeded that, our 2014's number, and that was in 2005 and 2007, where you're looking at almost 3,800 homes each of those years. So we're going to continue to see an upward tick there. And I think if you've been here long enough, you remember some of the cycles that has been going on with budgets and Hanfords and layoffs and different things that's happened. But you can see each one of those dips during those times. But the nice part about the Tri-Cities market is it's always a continued incline and rebounds fairly quickly. This is the average sales price of last year that the slide cut off the 212 mark. That's homes sold on a daily average. Well, the outlook that I am forecasting for 2015 is going to be an increase of probably home sales. I would say that we're going to be increasing home sales probably up to another 5%. I'm getting data from our local association and where we're at in that trend line, along with data from national and state, and they're projecting areas outside of us in upwards of near 15% more sales volumes, and because of the consumer confidence that's out there across the globe now. Millennial generation, those are our young buyers, 25 to 34, which is an interesting stat to see that Franklin County has the youngest population across the nation, and that falls right in line with them. They will be our #1 buyer this year. They're going to be our buyer that's going to be for our new homes, our resale homes that are in an affordable price range to allow people to continue to move up. We are forecasting interest rates are going to rise. I don't know how long they can stay as low as they are. It's been forecasted that it's probably going to get up near the 5% mark. We'll continue to watch that and see how that affects the affordability of our area. Obviously, everyone understands that when you raise rates, home affordability goes down. People qualify for a little bit less. The average home sales prices. This is something that's, if you remember the slide that I showed you, this is something that's continually gone about a 2 to 3% rate, except for those economic years where there was a downward trend in the market due to economic things that you couldn't control. And so I think that my prediction is that we are going to continue to see an increase in home sales prices. and which is putting money into everyone's pockets because we're building equity in our homes. And those people that will be moving up into new homes will actually have been able to capitalize on the equity they've built for the past few years. New home sales. I am projecting that we're going to be increasing new home sales based on jobs that are coming into the area, based on a low inventory of current homes on the market, and new ground that's opening up. People will have the opportunity to go out and build what they want versus purchasing a resale home. Now that's a tough comparable when you're selling a home, because you are always competing in the Tri-Cities with new construction just based on the availability of it. We're seeing more ground open up in the West Richland area. The Kennewick just did a new expansion off of Riata Road, opened up a whole bunch more ground, and actually connected that over to Dallas Road. Hildebrandt, like I mentioned earlier, is going to open up South Cliff, plus a whole lot of ground in between Steptoe and Highway 395. So with that, I open it up for any questions, and seeing none, I'll hand over the little remote. Thank you.
I think everybody here knows Don. He was in this community for years when he was the president of Agri-Northwest. He then got kicked upstairs and almost out of the country. He now oversees the operations of AgReserves, which owns Agri-Northwest. He oversees their operations not only in this country but throughout the world, and they're probably on every continent or just most continents. Speaking of making things up, he's a great speaker, and he has a marvelous sense of humor, which may make an appearance here with us this morning. So, without further ado, let me introduce a great friend of the Tri-Cities, Don Sleight.
When I got in town yesterday, I went to some meetings with Agri-Northwest, and then I dropped over to TriDeck. And Carl pointed out that I usually come in town and I try out some of my humor on him the day before this happened, and I didn't have any humor this year, and that may in fact be true. I'm going to walk you through a few slides. I think this year not going to talk just about agriculture from the producer standpoint, but maybe a little bit from the consumer standpoint, because I think you've probably seen some things in the store this last year that maybe distressed you a little bit, and we were all very happy about it. So this year, I expect you're going to get some of the last laugh on it. If you really think about agriculture and you think about the value of the U.S. dollar, if you look at the index on the U.S. dollar, agriculture really has had a pretty good decade, almost 15 years. But it's very much correlated with that devaluation of the dollar because it's made our products competitive in international markets, and so that's pulled a lot of stuff in. And so now we're seeing the dollar begin to strengthen, which would be something that would probably work a little bit against us in terms of exporting products to other countries. We all remember what's happened to crude oil, and you almost have to update this slide daily now. Because it moves so much. I noticed it was back up over $50 yesterday, I think. It went to 53 or something, but I didn't know that we would ever see these numbers again. I was living here in the mid-2000s the first time I took my company Ford Expedition to the gas station and filled it up, and it cost more than $50. I was pretty ticked. And then 3 years later, I got to see what it meant to spend $100 to fill up the same vehicle, and so I'm enjoying it a lot right now when I go to the gas pump. And that has a positive effect on agriculture, but it also has a negative effect because some years ago when Congress passed the Renewable Fuel Standards Act, they basically tied the price of corn to the price of crude oil by saying that we were going to make fuel out of corn. Once again, there's just retail gasoline. You know, retail gasoline doesn't bounce around quite as much as the price of crude oil. They hold it up a little bit better, and I notice if the price of crude goes up, the price at the pump goes up immediately, but if the price of crude goes down, it takes a little while for it to work its way down. And if we could get away with that, we'd all do that too. I'm going to show you this chart partially because I think it will explain a little bit about why we continue to not see food prices get high, even though the population of the world gets bigger and as countries gain more wealth and have more money to spend, they try and upgrade their diet. This is corn yields from 1870 to the present. And I'm sure this data is presented for corn because it's a data set where you have that long of data. And what you'll notice, excuse me, is for about the first 70 years on that chart, corn yields across the United States were basically flat. And it was around 25 bushels per acre. Not very good. And you'll notice a little fluctuation. During those 1930s, those fluctuations, you may see a 30% loss of yield in some years there, but that was 5 or 6 bushels per acre. Okay? This was the days when everything was produced organically because there were no manufactured fertilizers, there were no hybrid varieties, and there were no pesticides to control weeds or insects. The next 40 years is often referred to as the Green Revolution, where all of those things I just mentioned came into place in increasing production. And corn yields left that 30 bushel number and went up around 100. And so we got all that additional acreage. And then the last 40 years or so, someone declared the end of the Green Revolution. I don't know why, because if you look at the chart, the numbers kept going up. But you might label that an era in which we've removed crop stress from corn specifically. Some people would say that's biotechnology, but what biotechnology has largely done is made it easier to control the weeds and the insects without nearly as big inputs. And so with that, yields, we've basically removed crop failure. Every place where we've done that, we remove the things that cause crops to fail. And so that's largely been the gain. And so now you're seeing trendline yields are up in the 160 bushels per acre. And this last year we just had 171 bushels. So, and you know what? You don't see that curve starting to bend over where you'd see diminishing returns yet. And so it's an interesting phenomenon. And what you'll see here is that corn prices have bounced a few times. If you look at over a long history, back in the 1990s, there was a drought. In 2007 and 2008, we decided to make fuel out of corn, and it really ran it up. Then when the price of crude oil dropped, the price of corn went with it. Another pretty big run-up, and some of that's related to drought. So whereas with crude oil you don't have a drought, with corn you do. And then just quickly you'll notice that wheat and soybeans kind of move together with them, but they don't move quite as much. They're not quite as volatile, but they are substitute crops for each other, so when one goes up, the others kind of go with them. Now, let's talk about where this hits you. This is the price of ground beef over a pretty good period of time. And you'll notice, actually it's just since, 2009 that chart's showing. And if you look, it was around $2.50 a pound. And this isn't the nice fancy stuff where it's 93% lean. This is the 80 to 89% average. And you'll notice that recently there's another run up and you've been paying $4.50 a pound for it. And the guys at Agri-Northwest, when they hear the price of corn's down, they're pretty grim, but our guys at the feedlot in Kansas are pretty excited because now they're buying their feed cheap and the price of beef's up at the same time. And so in agriculture, you know, someone's good news is someone else's bad news. And but meat prices, beef prices are high right now. They are beginning to come down. They have been slowly coming down just in the last month or two now. And what you'll notice is this has been a fairly interesting phenomenon, that although that price has worked its way up slowly on ground beef, the price that the producer was getting, that phenomenon is mostly fairly recent. And so for the last year or two, the profitability of the industry has shifted back toward the producer rather than to the processor and those that are feeding the calves in feedlots. That's a fairly unusual phenomenon that makes its way all the way back to the ranch. This chart's too busy. I have one later, but what it really says is milk prices last year went to their all-time high. And you probably saw that in the store. Feed prices were actually declining, and so the margin on milk got way better. But you'll also notice, if you look right over at the right-hand side of the chart, it's diving. And this chart, I have one that's a little more updated, and you'll see it. One of the things that you'll see, and this chart's almost impossible to read, but it has the price of cheese on it, and it has the price of butter on it. And butter's the red line, and you notice just recently, last year, the wholesale price of butter went above $3 a pound. And now in just a few months, it's down to $1.50. You may not have noticed that at the market yet, but the price of butter's just been tumbling. Price of cheese is down, but butter is really falling out of bed. Class 3 milk futures. Class 3 milk's the milk that gets made into cheese, and you'll notice that it got up over $25 a hundredweight, and now it's fallen down to the $16 range. This has dairy farmers wanting to jump out of windows, but unfortunately when you jump out of a first-story parlor window, you don't get killed, but you may land in something you don't want to be in. So the dairy industry probably has the greatest capability of killing a goose that's laying golden eggs. They are quick to respond. If the market begins to pay them where they're profitable, they will immediately produce more milk and kill the market. And all of agriculture has that capability, but the dairy guys have raised it to an art form. This is fresh apples, and this is Washington data, and it's USDA data, and this is the price per pound. And what you'll notice about it is that the price of apples jumps around a lot, even within years, and that sort of happens because if you have the very first apples in the market when a new crop comes on, you usually get paid a premium for them. Then all the volume comes and the price falls, and then if you have some near the end of the season when everybody else is running out, you get paid for them again. And so it's a pretty high return, but it's also a high-risk crop. But generally, for the last 6 or 7 years, apples have done fairly well for Washington producers. You can see the trend, at least the most recent trend, is they're down a little bit, but it's been a pretty good run for Washington apple growers. And I think this is my last slide. This is farmland values, and this data is from the Midwest here, but you'll notice over the last 4 or 5 years that the price of farmland has been moving by 20 or 25% annually. Now there's a couple of things that have gone on. One, when you have drought and corn prices are high and those kinds of things, people jump in. The other thing that's happened is Wall Street has found farmland as an investment category. And there's a lot of institutional money that has flowed into this. Now they don't want to farm it, they just want to own it. And so what they have a tendency to do is buy farmland and lease it back to the person that's been farming it all along. They collect 2 or 3% rent on the value they paid for it, but then they've been counting on this land appreciation to make it a good category. And with interest rates as low as they were, and with the stock market for a period of time floundering, you've seen more and more institutional money move into ag land. I don't know what their staying power is. They have a lot of money, but they're fickle, and it remains to be seen whether they'll stay in and whether this is the trend on who will own farmland in the United States in the future. But in conclusion, I think what you're going to see is 2015 is going to be a better year for the consumer and not quite as good for the farmer. I think that you'll see that pretty much nationwide, and since I know which you represent mostly, it's going to be a great year. I know which one I represent. It may be a little less than good. So, but with that, that's kind of what's going on, and I appreciate the opportunity to come up here. I did figure out finally why I keep getting invited back, even though I've been gone nearly 6 years now. I come for free, which is a good deal for them. I'm from out of town now, so the guys from out of town are all better experts. And Agri-Northwest feels obligated to send some people to listen to me, so it's actually a moneymaker for Carl to bring me up here. So I know why I'm here, but I still appreciate it. It's a chance to come back to a place I call home. Thanks.
Our next speaker, I'm told, is here. There she is. Kris Watkins. Everybody in this room knows Kris Watkins, but for our guests from Australia, Kris has been the face, the leader of tourism in this region for years. I'm not going to tell you how many years she's been running the Visitors Convention Bureau, now known as Visit Tri-Cities, ! But if you took 40 years and divided it by 4 and took that number and multiplied it by 2, you'd be close. She's been doing a stellar job in her role, leading this community. She's got a lot to talk about today. And of course, I'm sure she'll say something about the bee reactor and the new national park and all of that as well, plus the growth of the wine industry, including the opening of the new wine science center at WSU Tri-Cities. And in terms of her background, it's stellar, including her leadership in the industry at large. She's been awarded the Washington State Tourism Professional of the Year Award. So without further ado, our own Kris Watkins. Kris?
Oh my goodness, what a morning. So I get a call this morning from Suzanne Heaston, and I am the understudy today because Suzanne was prepared to give this presentation, and it was kind of like in small office you divide and conquer. So I was off in a different direction, and so Suzanne was going to give this presentation. So I haven't had a chance to put this to memory yet, so I am going to do some reading this morning. And I ask that you bear with me, but we have some really great, interesting facts to share with this audience because tourism is a very, very important part of our Tri-Cities economy. In fact, it's the 4th largest industry in the state of Washington, and the Tri-Cities continues to have substantial growth in the tourism industry. So I'm really, really pleased to have this opportunity. Thank you, TriDec. So tourism is an integral part of creating a healthy economy and a vibrant community, and today I'm going to outline performance of the tourism industry on a national level as well as economic contribution that tourism makes locally. And just in case you haven't heard about all the positive developments taking place in our communities, I will provide a brief update on what you can look forward to in the coming weeks and months. But before I begin, it's important to outline why tourism and travel is so very important to our national economy and our local economy. When visitors come into a community, they spend money, and they spend a lot of money, and I want to thank Don, because I'm sure Don spent a lot of money when he came into the Tri-Cities region, and although he's a business traveler, I'm sure he comes and enjoys our golf courses and does other things as well. So thank you, Don. And also it contributes to jobs, and it adds to our tax spending, actually tax revenues in our communities to support municipal functions. And after a brief visit, visitors return home, which means that you don't have to build a lot of support in the way of community infrastructure. And it's a win-win for both small businesses and local business, and small businesses as well as local taxpayers throughout the region. And that's why communities throughout the nation invest in tourism marketing programs. And it's important to note that we all benefit from tourism and visitor spending, especially in the environment like the Tri-Cities that is blessed with our soccer tournaments, our conventions, our festivals and events, with a regional and national audience like our boat races, a growing wine and culinary industry, and a unique history that visitors are eager to learn about. Now think about all that money that's being spent by visitors. They cycle throughout the entire community, and I often think it's like waves because you see many large conventions come in, and it's like a tsunami. All of a sudden you'll have 5,000 people coming into the Tri-Cities region with a sports group, and then you'll have a little valley, and then again over a weekend you'll see a lot of people coming in. So it's just like waves of dollars and people coming into our communities, oftentimes to experience the Tri-Cities for the first time. And the gainfully employed hotel front desk agent invests their paycheck in consumer goods and services, which causes increased employment in retail stores and home sales, creating an economic snowball of spending throughout a community. In 2013, visitors spent $398.2 million in Benton and Franklin counties alone, supporting 5,200 jobs and generating $31.6 million in local and state taxes. So in order to grow that $398.2 million in visitor spending over the next few years, it's important to understand the new upcoming tourism trends that's happening nationally. Namely, the Millennials will become the core consumer group as they enter their peak earnings and spending travel years. They are willing to pay more for experiences. They want the process to be quick and efficient. Millennials want that quick response, fast and easy access to information, and the ability to make reservations on their own time, followed by a fast check in the process. And you better get it right the first time, because they share everything, good or bad, on social media. There will be an increase in international travelers in the United States. 100 million Chinese travelers will be coming to internationally, 100 million. In the United States, it's 10 million. And the Port of Seattle and the Port of Portland, but particularly Port of Seattle and Visit Seattle, are really doing some market penetration in that Chinese markets, with Seattle being a gateway city. Earlier this year, staff worked with the Port of Seattle to host journalists from the UK here in the Tri-Cites. And Visit Tri-Cites will soon be launching a new and improved website, which will feature manual Chinese translation on its primary pages, since computer-generated translation is less accurate. I will address the Manhattan Project National Historical Park and the Wine Science Center in just a few minutes, but these are the types of attractions that will not only bring people from the Northwest, but it's going to put the Tri-Cites on the map internationally. Mobile devices and smartphones will change the way we market the Tri-Cites to potential new visitors. In 2014, for the first time, the online activity from mobile devices exceeded that of desktop access. It will be imperative that all marketing tools are mobile-friendly. Visit Tri-Cites currently has a mobile-friendly website, but in a few months, a new site will be launched, which will also incorporate our new brand, Bigger, Bolder, and Brighter. And it's going to be also much more complex and interactive, yet still user-friendly for a handheld device. TripAdvisor has become the most popular travel website in the world, receiving 34 million unique users every month. TripAdvisor's success is attributed to the fact that TripAdvisor users trust the advice and reviews by other travelers as more authentic. They make their travel purchases based on these suggestions, and this is especially true if the user is traveling to a destination that they've never been before. Making a positive first impression on visitors has never been more important. Now, on a national level, in 2015, hotel revenues are expected to increase by 5 to 6%, and this was reported by Smith Travel Research. And this is due mostly to growth in average rates. For the last few years, growth in the supply of new hotels being built has been stagnant, but that's beginning to change. Due to the lending crisis in 2008, financing for new projects was not available, and so therefore there were very few hotels being built during that time period. In 2014, lending started to loosen up, and as a result, more hotels will be built in 2015. And we are seeing the results of this both regionally and locally, and in just a few months, 715 guest room hotel is going to be built, it's going to be opening in downtown Spokane. And the influx in available rooms may take up to about 5 years for the Spokane market to absorb that number of guest rooms. So they're going to be very, very aggressive coming into the Tri-Cities market as well as throughout Washington State. And so we expect that we are going to be very, very aggressive in getting into their market as well. So it's a very, very highly competitive industry. The Tri-Cities will also celebrate the opening of a number of new hotels, which is positive for consumers and provides Visit Tri-City staff with a variety of product to promote to visitors. But it also means a highly competitive marketplace in the Tri-Cities as our own hotels position themselves to maintain favorable occupancies during rapidly changing market conditions. Most recently, the long-awaited Homewood Suites Hotel with 115 guest rooms opened its doors. I believe they're having their open house tomorrow. And the M Hotel is reopening with 195 guest rooms coming onto the marketplace. In Kennewick, we have the long-awaited 114-room Spring Hill Suites, which our meeting planners are anxiously looking forward to, as well as Hampton Inn at Southridge later on this year. So by the end of 2015, we will have 568 more guest rooms in our overall Tri-Cities marketplace, making Visit Tri-Cities marketing programs more important than ever. The positive news is that our community will be well positioned to meet the needs of the visitors expected as a result of the recent investments in new demand generators that will be coming on in line in the future. The recently passed federal legislation, which allows the development of the Manhattan Project National Historical Park, will have a widespread and long-lasting effect on the number of visitors traveling into our region. In fact, National Parks has told us that once those doors open as a national park, we can expect 100,000 people that first year. So this community is really going to need to get prepared. And then for the next, and that'll be about the next 3 to 5 years. And while Hanford history is currently accessible through B-Reactors tours, it may take some time. The soon-to-be open WSU Wine Science Center will also have a positive tourism impact. The primary focus, of course, will be on education and discovery of new and better growing practices and winemaking practices. This in itself will attract students and scientists and journalists from around the world who will experience the Tri-Cities for the very first time. But there will also be an opportunity for visitors and wine enthusiasts to visit the process while it's taking place. And nearly as important for tourism, the location of a wine science center in the Tri-Cities legitimizes the Tri-Cities as truly being the heart of Washington wine country throughout the Northwest. And soon the world will know what we have known all along, that the Tri-Cities grows the best wines, grapes, throughout the nation. And speaking of creating a positive first impression, in December of 2016, the Tri-Cities Airport Terminal expansion will be complete. We're very, very excited about this. This expansion will allow for a greater passenger experience and the capability of serving bigger airplanes and delivering more visitors from a growing variety of destinations, increasing accessibility and offering a seamless travel, and that which are very key. So that's going to leave such a great first impression and a long-lasting, lasting impression as well. So with all this talk of the future, we don't want to forget to celebrate the recent developments that support the tourism industry this last year. The Reach opened its doors in July, receiving positive media exposure throughout the nation, particularly the Northwest. The opening of the Reach enhances the list of family-friendly attractions offered to visitors while telling the story of history and the accomplishments the Tri-Cities has experienced. The Reactor Tours continues to attract visitors from across the country and around the world, and the addition of the Carousel of Dreams just flat out makes our community a whole lot more fun, in addition to being bigger, bolder, brighter. And in closing, I do want to add that tourism definitely is making a positive difference in the entire Tri-Cities regions, and we appreciate the investment of our cities and our jurisdictions and our membership and all the citizens that help support the tourism industry. This truly takes a village to grow this great industry. So with that, thank you so very much. You've been a great audience, and I'll welcome any questions that anybody should have. Okay, thank you.